Hi, this is Robin with Weight Loss Apocalypse. Here is a clip from a session I had today with a client who came to me suffering from pretty terrible OCD, perfectionism, controllingness, and kind of leaning on the side of anorexia. Even though if you looked at her, based on what she's told me, she's like, yeah, you wouldn't. I'm 145, 140 pounds, and 5 foot tall. So she's holding herself to these anorexic standards and just struggling with reality. And so she came to me kind of going on and off the HCG protocol, the ketogenic, and just had a horrible time kind of finding a point of balance without the extreme impulsiveness to diet and then the consequential desire to binge, going back and forth, that pendulum swing like a lot of bulimics do. In this clip, we are talking about, because she's made a lot of progress, still a lot to go, but she's made a lot of progress in that she is no longer on a diet right now. She's just eating to hunger and focusing in on letting her body just be what it is for the moment. She isn't committed to never dieting again or not wanting to be thin, but she's realized she has to just let things be for the moment if she wants to get some sense of sanity. And she's this is the beginning 10 minutes of our session. She's describing how it is more relaxing, and we're talking about how that is, how we get to that place of relaxation with food and no more impulsiveness to binge. And so I go into that here in the beginning, and then we talk about what I found important in this part of this session. And this session has actually got a lot of different things in it. The end of it is amazing. So those of you in Patreon, go watch this session. The end of it's awesome. So we're talking about the difference between apathy and indifference. Apathy is, when you feel that you have completely and totally failed and there is no hope, which is very different than indifference. Indifference is that you are here nor there about it. Whereas, again, apathy is I've completely and totally failed, and it is defining you as a failure, right? And so you're stuck in a state of loss. And that sense of loss, and where it becomes pointless to even work on it, comes from the position that you are, in fact, a failure, that the loss defines you as a permanent failure. That is apathy. Indifference, even if you have equally failed, with indifference, you give it grace, that you don't feel that you are a failure. Even if the outcome is failure, you can have compassion for yourself, and you aren't defined by the failure as a failure. You're not internalizing it as a definition of your value or worth as a person. So we talk about that in this. So one being that it is, the failure or loss is forgivable. That would be indifference. And the other where it is unforgivable, where that is shame and apathy. So a lot of people struggle with this recovery process and accepting their weight, especially when they have morbid obesity, to actually accept it. The struggle is how do we keep them from going into apathy, which is, yes, it has been a complete and total failure, but the difference between that apathy and what I'm directing people to do is to actually forgive themselves and recognize that it's understandable why this has been a failure, and that doesn't mean that you are, in fact, a horrible person. It's just the system has failed. That's my husband. He's so cute. So I hope you enjoy this clip. If you would like my help, I'd be more than happy to help you. There is really no circumstance that I'm not open to assisting. There's really no, degree of eating disorder that I'm not open to coaching. Since I have recovered myself, why not try? So my website is below. If you would like to watch all of my current sessions that I've posted, they are now private, except if you join the Patreon group and support Weight Loss Apocalypse. That link is below as well. It's $5 a month. So, all right. Enjoy.
Worries.
How you been?
Yeah, I've been good. Yeah, much better.
I love that. That's good. It sounds like you're kind of maybe more stable, less impulsive. You're kind of just sitting in where you're at. I loved getting your text message yesterday about just eating to hunger, giving it grace.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I kind of have, okay, let's just calm down about all this. It's not to say, I don't want to, I want to stay where I'm at forever, or, I don't ever want to, lose weight, but it's not, this frantic, it has to be now. I'm okay with it being more natural,
Yes, that has to have allowed you to relax. Have you noticed that you are with food is less pressurized because of that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, and I don't have to hold myself to some particular program or
and perfectionism is reduced. You'll notice too that you don't have to be okay. So this is an important thing for you to witness and to observe. Just learn it. Yeah. Just learn through. It's kind of like I'm learning through experience rather than learning through memorization. You're experiencing that as you relax around your weight, that there is a relaxation that occurs around the perfectionism of your restrictions. And the impulsiveness to overeat is reduced as well. So both parts are reduced. Both aspects of how you relate to food. Meaning the first aspect of I have to be perfect in the restrictions. The second aspect of I have to go get the food now and eat it all in this moment. Right? And so that feeling you just described of it has to happen now, that feeling promotes intense perfectionism with food, promotes intense impulsiveness to binge or overeat. As you've reduced the now to relax, give it space, doesn't have to happen now, it can be later if it needs to be, you'll notice that there's a natural relaxation around the perfectionism with food, which then coincides with a relaxation around the impulsiveness to overeat or binge.
Exactly. Okay. Right. I'm not going to the point of, I'll never go to the point of, how you say, apathy, okay, just forget it, whatever.
Well, apathy is different. That what you just described is not apathy. Right. Apathy is, it's hopeless. I have completely and total failed. There is absolutely no hope. I might as well just die. Yeah. And that's different because you still believe that it is all bad. So you're still in a position of badness. That is not the same as indifference.
Right.
Indifference, you don't think that it's a bad thing. In fact, you would rather be indifferent because the benefits. There's a major benefit to the indifference. There's a difference between apathy, which is I have completely failed. I'm a horrible person. Hide darkness. I might as well die. Bad. Again, see the positionality in that around unless it is done right, I am wrong.
Right, it's still like extremism.
Totally. And it is hard to come out of apathy because you are not energized. Your whole entire beingness, it has felt loss of purpose. Right? So you've attached your purpose and you've created a loss of purpose, which is like, I might as well die. I've been there.
Yeah, I think, maybe I've been to degrees of it.
Yeah, I would agree, which is why you've been so impulsively trying to remove that. I mean, I get that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you go, indifference would be, you know what? And this is what I read in your notes. You were starting to feel some indifference around, which requires that you give yourself compassion and grace, right? Meaning, if it means, if I do this and I eat what is realistic and true for me, and my body stays the same, I will be okay.
Right.
That's
I'm still the same person.
And the benefit is that I'm not suffering from this crazy pendulum impulsiveness to either perfectly restrict or extremely impulsively, binge. So can you see how underneath that there's a reason why you're okay with where you're at? Because the benefit of not having to be an extremist food zealot, right? Restriction zealot.
Yeah.
It's pretty huge. So that's where you look at this, and I think and what I loved about what you were writing is you did give yourself some compassion around it, because you had written a list of things that I really love and who I am and what makes me valuable, and those are things that you could say, well, even if I'm not the thin god of all worship, I'm still a good person. So can you hear that in relation to that position, you're giving yourself some grace?
Right, and that, I don't have to make bitterness of being thin like the focus of my entire life, because I have all these things that I've just been discounting that are super important. And I go to work and it was just something I was at work the other day and I this one girl I really like, I'm like, I can't believe we were Facebook friends. She's like, I know, you're one of my most favorite people ever,
Yes.
They just, people don't, they don't define me by that, and so why should I, I think it, when you die, or, when, people are going and talking at your funeral, they're gonna say all those things I listed, that's what people, think of me,
Yeah.
You're not gonna say, oh, she was short, and she was,
she just wasn't tall enough. She just wasn't tall enough, We just shouldn't have a funeral for her, no memorials for her.
I mean,
So, that comes from your own, how you identify who you are, and ultimately that's why you've suffered so much. It's not because of how other people defined you, it's how you defined you. And yeah, it certainly helps to recognize that no one else is holding you to these standards. But in the end, what if they were holding you to those standards? Are you willing to suffer for their pleasure?
No, and I wouldn't want to be friends or anything with someone like that.
That's an important thing to connect. That's important for you to see. Because even if, clearly you're seeing, well, these people aren't holding me to these standards. They're not assholes. Yeah. So therefore, why am I doing it to myself? Well, clearly it has nothing to do with anybody else thinks, because you've been holding yourself to it, regardless of what anybody else has thought for years.
Yeah.
Right? And so it has nothing to do with other people's opinions so much as it does your opinion of what you think you need. And I think that comes back to, we talked the last few sessions about your perceptions of when you were a teenager, of what life was really like. Look at the way you believed life was like from your teenage perspective.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you've been doing this whole time.
Right. I've never progressed
You never changed. You never questioned it. You just never questioned it.
Yeah.
Never questioned it. And so now we're like, well, let's question that. And that's what you're doing. And don't feel bad. Don't feel bad or guilty or feel like there's something wrong or that you did something wrong by staying in that state of mind. I mean.
Right. I didn't know any different.
You didn't until you suffered enough. Mm-hmm. To where you were willing to open up, right, about it, to bring it out, to talk about it. It took a lot of years for you to suffer enough, trying to cope, trying to fix, trying to, chase that mirage and realizing I don't know if I can chase this much longer, to actually question, why the hell is this mirage here anyways?
Yeah.
And is this really what life is about? Is this what life is about? Chasing thinness. Is that really what my intention, what God's purpose was for me? Is that really?
No, that just sounds so dumb.
It does, but when you're inside of it, it feels like it is. Like that is what I have to do. And then when I do that, then I'll be free to find my purpose. But, right?
Yeah.
Would you agree that it feels, what it feels like on the inside is when I reach that, I will then have a purpose.
Yeah, and life will be perfect.
But the problem, exactly. I love that you're laughing about it because that's funny. Right? Again, teenage, you're thinking from that vantage point of like a 12 or 13-year-old. Not. Yeah. I know. It sounds like you sound like my 7th grader.
Right, mine too.
I know.
Yeah.
And it's understandable, but the problem here is that you internalized it as truth and fact. Truth and fact. Right. Even though it's like you're progressed, you're wiser, you're actually more mature than that. It's still being held on to as truth and fact. And so that you could say in your whole life, that has been your biggest crutch, or not crutch, but problem. Is this? It's like it's like your lowest, weakest point, but yet it's defining everything because you still believe it's true and factual.
Right.
The perspective of a 7th grader is literally holding you hostage.
Yeah.
It's funny, but that's what happens when you don't address those issues. You don't address them. You don't question them. Right? Because if you could go back to, let's just say, 6th grade, 5th grade, whatever it is, would you believe that again? No, you'd be like, yeah, that's a total waste of a life right there. You can believe that, but you're about to waste a lot of your existence on something that is doesn't go anywhere, literally in circles.
Yeah, completely.
What do you get out of it? What do you get out of thinness? What do you really get?
Like you said, narcissism.
Yeah, it's all in your head. It's all this like grandeur in your head. I'm so special.